My husband walked out with our kids to marry someone half my age in Paris. His last message said I should pack my things and disappear because successful men deserve better than worn-out wives. When they landed back home 3 weeks later, they found an empty field where our mansion used to stand. I sat in my truck across the street and watched their faces crumble. That was the moment I knew everything would be worth it. Let me take you back to how this perfect revenge came together. 6 months before that beautiful moment, I was Linda Martinez, married for 32 years to Richard Martinez, mother to 3 grown children who barely remembered I existed. According to my dear husband, I had become boring, old, and completely useless. Those were his actual words when he told me he was leaving for Vanessa, his personal trainer who was 26 years old. Nothing screams midlife crisis louder than a 58-year-old man chasing after someone young enough to be his granddaughter. But here we are. My whole family supported him too. My oldest son Marcus, who was 30 and still living off family money, said his father deserved happiness after all his hard work. My daughter Jessica, who was 28 and called herself a lifestyle blogger, which meant she posted pictures of expensive things she did not pay for, actually flew to Paris to be in the wedding party. My youngest son Tyler, who was 25 and bounced between jobs like a ping-pong ball, said I should be happy for them and move on with my life. Not one of them asked how I felt. Not one of them wondered if maybe their mother might be hurt by all this. They just assumed I would quietly accept my new role as the discarded wife who nobody wanted around anymore. Richard made his intentions crystal clear when he moved his things out of our bedroom and into a hotel downtown. Linda, he said while loading his designer suits into garbage bags because he could not be bothered to pack properly, I need you gone before we get back from Paris. Find an apartment somewhere cheap. Maybe one of those senior communities where you can play bingo with other old ladies. I deserve this new life. I have worked too hard to settle for less. He actually laughed at his own joke while carrying his golf clubs to Vanessa's bright yellow sports car. That car alone should have told me everything I needed to know about her maturity level. I hate old things, Richard continued like he was explaining something to a child. Everything about my old life feels suffocating. Vanessa makes me feel alive again. She makes me feel like I matter. I stood there in the doorway of the house I had built watching my husband of 3 decades treat me like expired milk. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to cry. But another part of me, the part that had been slowly waking up over the past few years, just felt cold and calculating. I smiled at him, which seemed to confuse him. Have a wonderful trip, I said pleasantly. Take lots of pictures. Make beautiful memories. Richard looked at me like I had grown a second head. He probably expected tears or begging or some dramatic scene he could use to justify his decision. Instead, I just waved as he drove away with his child bride to start their new adventure. What Richard did not know was that I had been preparing for this exact moment for almost 4 years. See, I found Vanessa's yoga pants in his car 4 years ago, tucked under the passenger seat like a forgotten trophy. Most women would have confronted their husband right then. Most women would have demanded explanations and apologies and promises to change. But I was not most women. I was a woman who had spent 32 years managing every aspect of our life while my husband took credit for my work. I was a woman who knew exactly where every dollar came from and where it went. I was a woman who understood that revenge is a dish best served ice cold with proper legal documentation. So instead of confronting Richard, I hired a private investigator. Instead of crying about the affair, I started organizing our financial records. Instead of begging him to stay, I built a case that would destroy him completely. And now, 4 years later, I was ready to execute a plan so perfect that Richard would spend the rest of his life understanding exactly what he had lost. The house demolition was scheduled for 3 days after they left for Paris. I had hired the best demolition crew in the state, the kind that could take down a structure and haul everything away in less than 48 hours. The kind that asked no questions and did excellent work. The mansion that Richard thought he owned, the mansion he had bragged about to his golf buddies for years, the mansion he promised to Vanessa as their new love nest, was about to become nothing but a memory and a bare patch of land. But first I had some other arrangements to make. I called my lawyer, Dorothy Kim, A fierce woman in her 70s who had been practicing family law for 50 years and had seen every trick in the book. "Dorothy," I said when she answered, "it's time. We are moving forward with everything." "About time," Dorothy replied with the tone of someone who had been waiting for this moment as eagerly as I had. "That man has no idea what is coming for him. The house was purchased entirely with money from my inheritance," I reminded her, even though we had been over this 100 times. "My parents left me everything when they died in that car accident 20 years ago. Richard's name was added to the deed later as a gift. But gifts can be revoked when the recipient proves unworthy. And adultery definitely counts as unworthy. Especially 4 years of documented adultery." Dorothy made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Linda, by the time we are done with him, Richard Martinez will be lucky if he can afford a tent in someone's backyard." "What about the business?" I asked. "Richard thinks he owns Martinez Construction. He has been telling people for years that he built that company from nothing." "We have all the documentation showing you are the sole owner," Dorothy confirmed. "Richard has been an employee this entire time. A well-paid employee, but still just an employee. He has no legal claim to the business, the assets, or the profits. He is going to lose his mind when he finds out." "That is exactly what I am counting on," I said. The demolition crew arrived at dawn on Tuesday. I watched from my truck parked 3 blocks away as they set up their equipment and started taking apart the house I had lived in for 25 years. The house where I had raised my children. The house where I had celebrated birthdays and holidays and anniversaries. The house where I had slowly died inside while my husband forgot I existed. Each wall that came down felt like shedding old skin. Each room that disappeared felt like releasing a weight I had carried for too long. By Wednesday afternoon, the house was completely gone. Just flat land with fresh dirt and a for sale sign that I had planted right in the middle. The sign said "Prime lot, ready for development, make an offer." I took pictures of everything and sent them to Dorothy with a simple message. "Phase 1 complete." Her response came back immediately. "Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I cannot wait to see his face. You and me both," I typed back. Richard and Vanessa were scheduled to land on Thursday evening. I had tracked their flight, knew exactly when they would arrive at the airport, and calculated how long it would take them to drive home. I wanted to be there when they pulled into the driveway. I wanted to see the exact moment when Richard realized his perfect new life was built on lies. Thursday evening arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, gentle breeze, the kind of evening that felt like nature itself was cooperating with my plan. I parked my truck across the street from where our house used to be and waited. Right on schedule, Vanessa's yellow sports car came speeding down the street. I could see Richard in the passenger seat, probably talking about how excited he was to start his new life in his beautiful house with his beautiful young wife. The car stopped so suddenly that the tires squealed. I watched as Richard's face went from confused to shocked to absolutely horrified. He opened the door and basically fell out of the car, stumbling toward the empty lot like a drunk man trying to find his balance. Vanessa was right behind him, her high heels sinking into the soft dirt, her designer dress completely wrong for standing in an empty field. "Where is the house?" Richard was screaming. He was spinning in circles like maybe the house was hiding somewhere behind him. "Where is my house? Linda, I know you did this. I know you are here somewhere. This is my property. You cannot just destroy my property." I rolled down my truck window just enough to hear every word. This was better than any movie I had ever watched. Richard's voice was getting higher and more panicked with each word. Vanessa was clutching his arm and crying, actual tears running down her face and ruining her makeup. "Baby," she was saying in that whiny voice that made me want to throw something, "you said we would have a beautiful home. You promised me we would live in luxury. I thought we were going to have a pool and a game room and a home theater." "We had all of that," Richard shouted back at her. "We had everything. That crazy woman destroyed it all." He pulled out his phone and started dialing. I could only imagine he was calling his lawyer, some poor guy who was about to get an earful about property destruction and revenge and angry ex-wives. "What do you mean the house was legally sold?" Richard was yelling into his phone. "My name was on that deed. I lived there for 25 years. How can she just sell it without telling me? Check your records again. This has to be a mistake. I watched him pace back and forth across the empty lot. His expensive shoes getting dirty. His face getting redder with each passing second. Vanessa had given up trying to walk in her heels and was standing in one spot, crying and probably regretting every decision that had led her to this moment. That is when Marcus pulled up in his luxury car, the one he bought with family money and barely drove because he could never be bothered to put gas in it. He got out slowly, staring at the empty lot like it might disappear if he looked away. "Dad," Marcus called out, "what happened to the house? Where is everything?" "Your mother happened," Richard spat. "Your insane mother sold our house and had it torn down while we were in Paris. She destroyed everything out of pure spite." I could see Marcus processing this information. His brain working slower than usual, which was saying something. "Dad," he finally said, "where are we supposed to stay?" "I was planning to move back home for a while until I figured out my next business venture." "There is no home," Richard shouted. "Do you not understand what I am saying? The house is gone. Your mother destroyed it." Marcus looked genuinely upset, but I suspected it was more about losing his free housing than about any concern for his father. "Dad, this is crazy. You need to call the police. You need to sue her. You need to do something." "I'm doing something," Richard yelled back. "I'm calling every lawyer I know. This is not legal. This is theft. This is vandalism. This is justice," I said, finally getting out of my truck and walking toward them. They all turned to stare at me like I had appeared out of thin air. Richard's mouth actually fell open. Vanessa took 3 steps backward. Marcus just looked confused, which was his default expression. "Hello, family," I said in my sweetest voice. "Welcome home. How was Paris? Did you have a lovely time at the wedding that I was not invited to? What have you done?" Richard's voice came out strangled like someone was choking him. "Where is my house? Where is everything?" "It's not your house," I explained patiently like I was talking to a child. "It was my house. Purchased with my money. Built on my land. And I decided I did not want it anymore, so I sold it to a lovely developer who is going to build something modern and beautiful here. Something without bad memories." "Your house," Richard was turning purple now. "That was our house. We lived there together. We raised our children there." "Actually, Richard, we did not." I pulled a folder out of my bag, the same bag he had called ugly and outdated last year. "I raised our children there. You were barely home. Too busy with work and golf and apparently your personal trainer. I paid for that house with inheritance money from my parents. Your name was added to the deed as a gift. But gifts can be taken back when the person proves they do not deserve them." "That is impossible," Richard whispered. "You cannot just take my name off a deed." "Sure I can," I said cheerfully. "Especially when I have documentation proving that the house was purchased entirely with my inheritance money. Especially when I have proof that you have been committing adultery for 4 years. Especially when my lawyer is very good at finding loopholes in property law." 4 years, Vanessa's voice was small and confused. "Richard, what is she talking about?" "Oh honey," I turned to look at her with fake sympathy. "Did Richard not tell you? You were not his first affair. You were just the one stupid enough to quit your job and give up your apartment for him." The look on Vanessa's face was worth everything I had spent on the demolition. "Richard," she said slowly, "you told me we were soulmates. You said you had never felt this way about anyone before. You said I was special." "You are special," Richard insisted, but he sounded less confident now. "Linda is just trying to cause trouble. She is jealous because I found someone better. Someone younger and prettier." "Younger," I agreed. "Prettier is debatable. But definitely dumber if you thought marrying a man who is still legally married to someone else was a good idea." "Wait," Vanessa's voice went up 3 octaves. Wait. Richard, you said we got married in Paris. You said it was legal and romantic and official." "We did get married." Richard was sweating now, his shirt showing dark patches under his arms. "The ceremony was beautiful. You were there. You saw it happen." "A ceremony is not a marriage," I informed Vanessa gently. "A marriage requires paperwork, legal documents, divorce from the previous spouse. None of which Richard bothered to arrange because he is still married to me. Very married." Extremely married. Richard, Vanessa turned to him with tears streaming down her face. Tell her she is lying. Tell her we are really married. Richard opened and closed his mouth several times, but no words came out. Marcus was staring at his father with growing horror. Even he was starting to understand what had happened. You lied to her, Marcus said slowly, like he was working through a difficult puzzle. Dad, you told everyone you were getting married, but you never actually filed for divorce. The paperwork was complicated, Richard finally managed to say. I was going to handle it after the wedding. There were fees and waiting periods and legal stuff. Legal stuff he never bothered to figure out because he assumed I would just disappear, I added. Richard thought I would quietly sign whatever papers he eventually got around to sending me. He thought I would pack up and move to some cheap apartment and never cause any trouble. He thought wrong. That is when Jessica arrived, pulling up in her pink car that I had helped her buy 2 years ago. She got out with her phone already recording because of course she was going to document this for her followers. Oh my God, Jessica said breathlessly, staring at the empty lot. This is insane. Dad, where is the house? Where is everything? Your mother destroyed it, Richard announced like he was delivering breaking news. She sold our house and tore it down while we were celebrating my wedding. She destroyed our family home out of pure spite. Our family home that she paid for, I corrected. Our family home that she maintained while you were busy with your affairs. Our family home that she legally owned and could legally sell whenever she wanted. Jessica was still recording, probably already thinking of captions for her social media. This is like a movie, she said. This is so dramatic. It's not dramatic, Richard snapped at her. It's criminal. It's theft. It's your mother being vindictive and cruel. It's your mother being smart, I said calmly. It's your mother finally standing up for herself after 32 years of being treated like she did not matter. You all went to Paris for a wedding that was not even legal. You all celebrated while Richard replaced me with someone younger. Not one of you asked how I felt. Not one of you cared that I was being thrown away like garbage. Mom, Jessica lowered her phone slightly. We thought you would be fine. You're always fine. You always handle everything. I was fine, I agreed. I handled it. I handled it by taking back everything that was mine and leaving your father with exactly what he deserves. Which is nothing. That is when I dropped the first real bomb. Oh, and Richard, you should probably check your bank accounts. I had them frozen this morning pending our divorce proceedings. What? Richard's voice cracked like a teenage boy. You cannot freeze my accounts. Those are my accounts. Actually, most of them are joint accounts. And when one spouse commits adultery and tries to hide assets, the other spouse can request a freeze to prevent further theft. My lawyer filed the paperwork this morning. The judge approved it this afternoon. Your credit cards are also suspended. Richard pulled out his phone and started frantically checking his banking apps. I could see his face going from red to white to green as he realized I was telling the truth. This is illegal, he kept saying. This cannot be legal. You cannot just take away my money. It's not your money, I explained patiently. It's our money. Money that I earned through my business. Money that you spent on your girlfriend. Money that you wasted on trying to impress someone young enough to be your daughter. Now that money is being protected until we can divide it fairly in the divorce. Fairly, Richard shouted. You call this fair? You destroyed my house, froze my accounts, and humiliated me in front of everyone. And you cheated on me for 4 years, I shot back. You lied to your girlfriend about being divorced. You tried to steal my property. You told our children I was worthless and should disappear. So yes, Richard, I call this fair. That is when the real fun began. You see, I was not done yet. Not even close. Richard thought the house was the worst of it. He thought losing access to his money was rock bottom. He had no idea that I had been planning this for 4 years and had thought of everything. Absolutely everything. Richard, I continued in that same pleasant tone. Do you remember that business loan you co-signed for Tyler last year? The one for his brilliant idea to start a food truck that he gave up on after 3 months. Marcus was co-signed on that too. Richard's face went even paler if that was possible. What about it, he managed to say. Well, the loan is 3 months overdue. The lenders have been very patient, but they are starting to get aggressive about collecting. And since you personally guaranteed that loan with your signature, they are going to come after you for the full amount. Mom, Tyler's voice came from behind me. I spun around to see my youngest son walking up from where he had parked down the street. You would not do that. You have been covering those payments. I was covering those payments, I corrected him. I was enabling your irresponsibility. But I have decided to stop doing that. You borrowed $30,000 for a business you abandoned. You need to learn that actions have consequences. I can pay it back, Tyler protested, but his voice lacked conviction. I will get a job. I will figure it out. That would be wonderful, I said. I look forward to seeing you actually work for something instead of expecting it to be handed to you. Richard was checking his phone again, probably looking at the loan documents he had signed without reading because he never paid attention to financial details. How much, he asked weakly. How much do we owe? $30,000 originally, I said. With late fees and interest, it's up to about $38,000 now. And climbing. Richard made a sound like a wounded animal. I do not have $38,000. Not with my accounts frozen. Then I suggest you figure something out, I said cheerfully. Because the lenders are not going to wait forever. And when they do come to collect, they are going to take whatever they can find. Cars, jewelry, golf clubs, whatever has value. I watched as my entire family stood in the empty lot, slowly realizing that their comfortable life had just exploded. Richard was panicking about money. Vanessa was crying about being lied to. Marcus was worrying about where to live. Tyler was freaking out about the loan. And Jessica was still recording it all because she literally could not help herself. But I still was not done. Oh, I said like I had just remembered something important. There is one more thing you should all know. Richard and I are still married, which means Vanessa, you are not actually his wife. You are just his girlfriend who gave up everything for a man who lied to you. But more importantly, Richard, do you remember telling me that you own Martinez Construction? That you built that company from nothing? That it was your greatest achievement? What about it? Richard said suspiciously. Have some news about that. Martinez Construction is not your company. Never was. What are you talking about? Richard's voice was getting shrill. I built that company. I worked 60-hour weeks. I took on the difficult clients. I made that business successful. You worked for that company, I corrected. You worked for me. I own Martinez Construction. I always have. I started it with my inheritance money 20 years ago. Your name is on the payroll as head of operations, but you are an employee, Richard. A very well-paid employee, but still just an employee. That is impossible, Richard was shaking his head. That is not true. Have business cards. I sign contracts. I make decisions. You make decisions that I approve, I said. You sign contracts that I authorize. You have business cards because it looks good to clients. But every single legal document shows that I own 100% of the company. You can ask Tom Bradley if you do not believe me. Tom has been the actual manager of operations for years while you played golf and pretended to be a big shot. Richard looked like he might actually pass out. Tom, he whispered. Tom knows. Tom has always known. Tom has been covering for you because I paid him well to manage things while you took credit. But Tom answers to me, not you. And I just promoted Tom to CEO. Your position has been eliminated. You mean I am fired? Richard said slowly. I mean you are no longer employed by Martinez Construction, I confirmed. Your services are no longer needed. You have been an employee for 20 years. Severance is 2 weeks' pay. You can pick up your final check from accounting next Monday. This cannot be happening, Richard was saying over and over like a broken record. This cannot be real. You cannot just fire me. I can and I did, I said firmly. The company is performing better without you there anyway. Turns out your biggest contribution was getting in the way of people who actually knew how to do their jobs. Marcus was staring at me like he had never seen me before. Mom, he said slowly, are you telling us that you have been the real boss this whole time? That Dad has just been pretending? Your father was not pretending, I said. He genuinely believed he owned the company. He spent 20 years taking credit for my work and my money. He told everyone he was a self-made businessman when really he was just good at spending what I earned. I should have corrected him years ago, but I thought keeping the peace was more important than telling the truth. I was wrong. Jessica had finally stopped recording. She was looking at her father with something like pity mixed with disgust. "Dad," she said quietly, "did you really not know? Did you really think you owned all this stuff?" "I did own it," Richard insisted, but his voice was weak. "I built our life. I worked hard. I provided for this family." "Mom provided for this family," Tyler said. "And suddenly I realized my youngest son might actually be smarter than I gave him credit for." "Dad, Mom paid for everything. She managed everything. She ran the business. We just never paid attention because it was easier to believe you were the successful one." Richard looked at Tyler like he had been betrayed. "Son, you do not understand. It's complicated." "It's not complicated at all," Tyler said. "You cheated on Mom. You tried to steal her stuff. You lied to everyone, including yourself. And now you are facing the consequences. Good for you, Mom." I felt something warm in my chest. Pride maybe. Or hope that at least one of my children was starting to understand what I had been trying to teach them. "Thank you, Tyler," I said softly. But Richard was not done fighting. He turned to Vanessa, who was still crying quietly in the middle of the empty lot. "Baby," he said desperately, "we can fix this. We can get our own place. I will find a new job. We will build something together from scratch. It will be romantic." Vanessa looked at him with swollen eyes and running makeup. "Richard," she said slowly, "you lied to me about everything. You are not divorced. You do not own a house. You do not own a business. You do not even have money. Everything you told me was a lie." "It was not all lies," Richard protested. "My feelings for you are real. My love is real." "Your love is expensive," Vanessa shot back. "You spent thousands of dollars trying to impress me. You bought me that car. You took me on trips. You bought me jewelry and clothes and made me think we were going to have this amazing life together. Where did all that money come from, Richard? Where did you get the money to pretend you were rich?" "He got it from me," I answered for him. "Every gift Richard bought you came from joint accounts that I filled with my earnings. Every vacation you took was charged to credit cards that I paid off. That car you are driving, I made the down payment. You have been living off my money while thinking you were dating a successful man." Vanessa turned to look at her yellow sports car like it had suddenly turned into a monster. "I need to go," she said quietly. "I need to go home and think about my life choices." "Baby, wait." Richard reached for her, but she jerked away. "Do not touch me," she said. "Do not call me. Do not contact me. I need to figure out how I am going to fix the mess you made of my life." She walked to her car, got in, and drove away without looking back. Richard stood there watching her leave, looking more lost and confused than I had ever seen him. He had lost his house, his money, his job, his girlfriend, and his dignity all in one afternoon. It was beautiful. "Dad," Marcus said carefully, "where are you going to stay tonight?" "I do not know," Richard said. He sounded completely defeated. "I did not plan for this." "That is the problem," I said. "You never plan. You just assume things will work out because they always have before. 'Cause I always fixed everything for you. But I am not fixing anything anymore. You are on your own. There is a hotel downtown," Jessica offered. "It's not expensive. Maybe you can stay there for a few nights while you figure things out." "I do not have money for a hotel," Richard reminded her. "My accounts are frozen, remember?" Jessica looked uncomfortable. "I could lend you some money. Just for a few days." "That would be very kind of you," I said. "Richard should learn what it feels like to depend on his children for basic survival. Maybe it will teach him some humility." Richard was not listening anymore. He was staring at the empty lot like he could will the house back into existence if he concentrated hard enough. 32 years, he said quietly. 32 years of marriage, and this is what it comes to. Standing in an empty field with nothing. "You had 32 years to treat me with respect," I said. "You had 32 years to value me as a partner instead of as a servant. You had 32 years to be faithful and honest and decent. You wasted every single one of those years. This is what you chose, Richard. Live with it." I turned to walk back to my truck, but Marcus called after me. Wait. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to pick sides? Do you want us to stop talking to Dad?" I want you to grow up, I said simply. I want you to get jobs and pay your own bills and learn how to be responsible adults. I want you to understand that I am not a bank or a maid or a problem solver. I am a person who deserves respect. If you can manage that, we can have a relationship. If not, then you are on your own just like your father. What about family? Jessica asked. Are we not supposed to stick together? Family sticks together when everyone pulls their weight, I said. Family does not mean letting people take advantage of you. Your father took advantage of me for 32 years. You three took advantage of me for your entire lives. I am done being taken advantage of. But we are your children, Marcus protested. You are adults, I corrected. You are adults who need to learn that actions have consequences. Consider this your education. I got in my truck and drove away, leaving all four of them standing in the empty lot. In my rearview mirror, I could see Richard slowly sinking to his knees in the dirt, finally understanding that his old life was never coming back. The next few weeks were glorious. Dorothy filed all the divorce papers with documentation of Richard's 4-year affair, his attempts to steal my property, and his complete lack of contribution to our marital assets. The judge took one look at the evidence and ruled in my favor on every single point. Richard tried to fight it. He hired a lawyer who charged him money he did not have for a case he could not win. The lawyer argued that Richard deserved half of everything because marriage was a partnership. Dorothy laughed in court and presented bank records showing that I had earned 92% of our household income over 32 years. She showed property records proving I owned the house, the business, and most of our investments. She played recordings of Richard telling Vanessa that he owned everything when really he owned nothing. The judge was not amused. The final divorce settlement gave Richard exactly what he had contributed to our marriage. Nothing. He got his clothes, his golf clubs, and his car, which was leased in my name anyway. Everything else stayed with me. The house money went into my accounts. The business stayed under my control. The investments and savings remained untouched. Richard walked away with nothing except debt and regret. But the best part came 3 months after the divorce was final. I was sitting in my new condo, the one I had bought with cash in a secure building downtown, when my phone rang. It was Tyler. "Mom," he said, and his voice sounded different. Older maybe. More serious. "Can we meet for coffee? I would like to talk." Almost said no. Almost told him I was busy. But something in his voice made me reconsider. "Sure," I said. "But we split the bill." "Fair is fair," he agreed. We met at a small coffee shop near my new place. Tyler showed up on time, which was unusual for him. He was wearing regular clothes instead of his usual expensive brand names. He looked tired but also somehow more alive than I had seen him in years. "Mom," he started and then stopped like he did not know how to continue. "Got a job. Real job. I am working at a warehouse, driving a forklift and loading trucks. It's hard work and the pay is not great, but it's honest and I am learning things." "That is wonderful, Tyler," I said, and I meant it. "How does it feel?" "Feels good," he admitted. "Feels like I am actually accomplishing something instead of just floating through life. And I have been thinking about what you said. About growing up and taking responsibility. You were right. I have been a child my whole life. I am trying to change that." I felt tears starting in my eyes. This was what I had wanted. Not revenge. Not punishment. Just for my children to understand. "I am proud of you," I said. "Thank you for telling me." Tyler took a sip of his coffee. "Dad is not doing well. He is living in a cheap motel and working at a hardware store. Marcus is staying with friends and looking for work. Jessica is still posting on social media, but she has stopped talking about designer things and started posting about real-life stuff. We are all kind of a mess. Sometimes messes are necessary," I said. "Sometimes things have to fall apart before they can be put back together the right way." "Do you think you will ever forgive Dad?" Tyler asked. "I do not know," I answered honestly. "Forgiveness is complicated. Right now I am just focused on building my own life without people who do not value me." Tyler nodded. "That is fair. Ness, do you think you will ever trust us again?" "That depends on you," I said. "Trust is earned. You cannot just say sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. You have to show me through your actions that you have changed. I want to try, Tyler said. I want to show you that I can be better. That I can be the kind of son you deserve. Then try, I said gently. Take it one day at a time. Make good choices. Be responsible. Treat people with respect. If you can do that, we can rebuild our relationship. But it has to be real, Tyler. I will not accept fake apologies or temporary changes. I understand, Tyler said. And Mom, I am really sorry. For everything. For not defending you. For taking you for granted. For being a spoiled brat who did not appreciate what he had. I know words do not mean much, but I want you to know I am genuinely sorry. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Thank you for saying that. Means more than you know. We finished our coffee and talked about small things. His job. My new condo. The weather. Normal things that normal families talk about. When we stood up to leave, Tyler hugged me tight. I will call you next week, he said. Maybe we can have coffee again. I would like that, I said. And Tyler, I am proud of you for working. For trying. For growing up. Takes courage to change. 6 months passed. Tyler kept his word and called me every week. We had coffee regularly and he told me about his job, about the friends he was making, about the simple life he was building for himself. Jessica reached out too eventually. She came to my condo looking nervous and humble, 2 things I had never associated with her before. Mom, she said, I am sorry for being so shallow. For caring more about social media than about real life. For not standing up for you when Dad treated you like trash. I have been doing a lot of thinking and I realized I did not even know who you really were. I just saw you as Mom who fixed things and paid for stuff. I invited her in and we talked for hours. Really talked. Not the surface-level conversations we used to have where she told me about followers and likes and brand deals. We talked about real things. About feelings and hurt and family and what it means to be a good person. She cried. And when she left, I felt like maybe I had gotten my daughter back. Marcus took longer. He was stubborn like his father, and it took him almost a year to swallow his pride and reach out. When he finally did, he showed up at my door looking thinner and tired but also somehow better. More real. Mom, he said simply, I was wrong about everything. Can we start over? Starting over takes time, I told him. But I am willing to try if you are. He nodded and we sat down to talk. He told me about struggling to find work, about learning that trust fund money does not last forever, about finally getting a job in sales that he actually had to work at. He told me about realizing how much I had done for him and how little he had appreciated it. I do not expect you to forgive me right away, Marcus said. I just want a chance to prove I can be better. You have your chance, I said. Use it wisely. Richard was a different story. He tried to contact me multiple times, but the restraining order kept him away. He sent letters that I threw away without reading. He had Jessica pass along messages that I ignored. He wanted forgiveness without earning it. He wanted things to go back to normal without doing the work to change. A year after the divorce, I heard through Tyler that Richard had finally hit rock bottom. He lost his job at the hardware store for showing up late too many times. He got evicted from his motel room for not paying rent. He ended up sleeping in his car for 3 weeks before Marcus took pity on him and let him sleep on a couch. It was not the ending I had imagined. I thought I would feel victorious seeing Richard struggle. I thought I would enjoy watching him suffer the way I had suffered. But instead I just felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that a man I had loved for 3 decades had thrown everything away for someone who did not even want him anymore. Sad that my children had to watch their father fall apart. But I did not rescue him. I did not swoop in to save the day like I had done so many times before. Because Richard needed to learn the lesson that everyone else was learning. Actions have consequences. And sometimes those consequences are harsh and painful and permanent. 2 years after the divorce, I was living my best life. My business was thriving without Richard there to mess things up. Tom Bradley had turned out to be an excellent CEO, and we were landing bigger contracts than ever before. My condo was exactly the way I wanted it, decorated with things I actually liked instead of things Richard thought looked impressive. I had joined a book club and made real friends. women my age who valued me for who I was instead of what I could provide for them. I had taken up painting and discovered I was actually pretty good at it. I traveled to places I had always wanted to see but never had time for when I was busy managing everyone else's life. I was happy. Genuinely, completely happy. And that happiness had nothing to do with revenge or punishment or watching Richard suffer. It was just the pure joy of finally living for myself. Tyler had become my closest child. He worked his way up at the warehouse and was now a supervisor. He had met a nice girl named Sarah who treated him well and did not care that he came from money that he no longer had access to. They were talking about getting engaged, and Tyler had asked me to meet Sarah over dinner. I liked her immediately. She was kind and hardworking, and she loved Tyler for who he was, not what he could buy her. Jessica had pivoted her social media presence to focus on authenticity and real life instead of fake perfection. She had partnered with brands that valued honest marketing and was actually making more money than before while feeling better about herself. She had apologized publicly for the way she treated our family situation, posting a thoughtful video about privilege and taking people for granted. Some of her followers left. Many more stayed and respected her for her honesty. Marcus struggled the most, but he was trying. He had steady work now and was slowly paying off his debts. He called me once a month and we had lunch occasionally. It was not the close relationship I had with Tyler, but it was honest and real, and that mattered more than frequency. And Richard was still struggling. He had found another job and was living in a small apartment that Marcus helped him pay for. He had aged badly in 2 years, looking closer to 70 than 60. I heard he had tried dating a few times but nothing worked out. Women his age did not want to deal with his baggage, and women Vanessa's age were not interested in a broke old man living in a tiny apartment. He was lonely and sad and facing the reality that he had destroyed his life for a fantasy that was never real to begin with. 3 years after the divorce, I got a letter. It came to my business address, forwarded by Tom, who knew I did not want Richard having my personal information. The letter was handwritten on cheap paper, and the writing was shaky like Richard had written it multiple times trying to get it right. Linda, the letter started. I know you probably will not read this. I know I do not deserve your time or attention. But I need to say some things even if you never respond. I was wrong. About everything. I was wrong to cheat on you. I was wrong to treat you like you did not matter. I was wrong to take credit for your work and your money and your success. I was wrong to think I could replace you with someone younger and that would somehow make me happy. I was wrong to believe the lies I told myself about being a self-made man when really I was just riding on your coats the whole time. I have spent 3 years trying to understand how I messed up so badly. How I threw away the best thing in my life for something that was never real. And the truth is, I was scared. Scared of getting old. Scared of becoming irrelevant. Scared of looking at myself honestly and seeing a man who had not actually accomplished anything on his own. So I ran away from those feelings by chasing after someone who made me feel young and important. But all I did was prove that I was old and foolish. You built everything, Linda. Our home, our business, our life. And I took it all for granted because it was easier than admitting I needed you. It was easier than thanking you. It was easier than treating you like an equal partner instead of like furniture that was just always there. I am not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I do not deserve that. I am not writing to ask for another chance. I know that ship has sailed and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. I am writing because you deserve to hear me say that you were right. About all of it. I was a terrible husband. I was a bad father. I was a fraud who believed his own lies. And you were the only real thing in my life. I hope you are happy now. I hope you have found peace and joy and everything you deserve. I hope our children have learned from my mistakes and are treating you with the respect I should have given you all along. And I hope someday you can think about our marriage and remember some good moments instead of just the way it ended. I'm sorry, Linda. For everything. Richard. I read the letter 3 times sitting at my desk with tears running down my face. Not because I wanted him back. Not because I forgave him. But because it was the first time in 32 years that Richard had actually seen me. Really seen me. Really understood what he had lost. I did not respond to the letter. There was nothing to say. The time for words had passed years ago. But I kept it. Folded it up and put it in a drawer where I kept important documents. Not because it changed anything, but because it was proof that the lesson had finally been learned. Even if it came too late to matter. 5 years after the divorce, Tyler got married to Sarah in a small ceremony that was beautiful and perfect. He asked me to walk him down the aisle and I cried happy tears the whole way. Jessica was the photographer and she captured every moment with love and artistry. Marcus was there with his new girlfriend, a teacher named Emma who seemed to genuinely care about him. And Richard was there too. Tyler had invited him because despite everything, he was still their father. I had agreed to it because I was past the anger now. Past the need to punish him. Richard sat in the back row and did not try to talk to me. He looked old and tired but he smiled during the ceremony and cried when Tyler and Sarah exchanged vows. After the wedding, during the reception, Richard approached me carefully like he was walking toward a dangerous animal. "Linda," he said quietly. "Richard," I replied neutrally. "You look good," he said. "Happy." "I'm happy," I confirmed. "Good," he said. "You deserve to be happy." "Thank you," I said. And then because I was genuinely curious, I asked, "How are you doing?" He smiled sadly. "I am surviving. Working. Paying my bills. Living a quiet life. It's not the life I imagined but it's honest and that is something I guess." "That is something," I agreed. Richard looked like he wanted to say more but did not know how. Finally he just said, "Thank you for raising our children right. They are good people in spite of having me as a father. They are good people because they learned from their mistakes," I said. "Just like I hope you have learned from yours." "Have," Richard said. "Too late to fix what I broke but I have learned." We stood there for a moment in awkward silence. Then Richard nodded and walked away, back to his seat in the corner where he sat alone for the rest of the night. I watched him for a moment and felt something I had not expected to feel. Pity. Not the kind of pity that makes you want to rescue someone, but the kind that comes from understanding that some people destroy their own lives and have to live with that knowledge forever. Richard was living his consequences. And that was enough. 10 years after the divorce, I was 62 years old and living the life I had always dreamed of. My business was worth more than I had ever imagined. My children were grown and independent and treating me with respect and love. I had friends and hobbies and peace. I had everything I needed and nothing I did not want. I was sitting on the balcony of my condo one evening, watching the sun set over the city, when my phone rang. It was Marcus. "Mom," he said, and his voice was shaky. "Dad is in the hospital. He had a heart attack. They say it's serious. Do you want to see him?" I sat there holding the phone, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Anger at what he had done. Sadness for what we had lost. Relief that I had escaped when I did. And underneath it all, a small echo of the love I had once felt for the man he used to be. "Yes," I said finally. "I will come see him." The hospital was cold and sterile and smelled like disinfectant. Richard was in a room on the 4th floor, hooked up to machines that beeped and whirred. He looked impossibly old lying there in the hospital bed. His skin gray, his breathing shallow. All 3 of my children were there. Tyler holding Sarah's hand. Jessica wiping tears from her eyes. Marcus standing stiff and uncomfortable in the corner. They all looked relieved when I walked in. Richard's eyes opened when he heard my footsteps. "Linda," he whispered. His voice was so weak I could barely hear it. "Hello, Richard," I said, moving closer to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Terrible," he admitted with a ghost of a smile. "But I guess that is what happens when you spend years treating your body as badly as you treated everything else in your life." I did not disagree. "The doctors say you are going to be okay," I said. "That you need to change your lifestyle but you will recover." Richard shook his head slightly. "Linda, we both know I am not going to change. I am too old and too stubborn and too broken. This is just the beginning of the end." "Do not say that," Jessica said from across the room. "You can get better. You can make better choices." "I appreciate the optimism, sweetie," Richard said to her. "But I am a realist now. Finally. After all these years. I am finally seeing things clearly." "And what do you see?" I asked. Richard looked directly at me with eyes that were clearer than they had been in years. I see a man who wasted the most precious thing he had because he was too stupid to recognize its value. I see a man who destroyed his own life and deserved every consequence that came from it. I see a man who is going to die someday soon knowing he lost the best woman he ever met because he was a coward and a fool. The room was completely silent except for the beeping of machines. I see all that, Richard continued. But I also see that the woman I lost is happy now, successful now, living the life she always deserved. And I see that my children learned from my mistakes and are building better lives than I gave them. So maybe my life was not completely wasted. Maybe I served as a cautionary tale, a lesson in what not to do. Richard, I said softly, you do not have to do this. Do what he asked. Have some dramatic deathbed revelation. Make some grand statement. You can just rest and get better. But he was shaking his head again. Linda, I have wanted to say these things to you for 10 years, but I was too afraid you would tell me to go to hell. Now I might actually be going to hell, so I figure I should say them while I still can. He took a shaky breath and continued. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I treated you like the worst. You built everything and I took all the credit. You loved me when I did not deserve it, and I threw that love away for nothing. You gave me 32 years and I gave you 32 years of reasons to hate me. If I could go back and change everything, I would. But I cannot. So all I can do is tell you that you were right to leave. You were right to take everything. You were right to protect yourself from me. And I am sorry it took me losing everything to understand what I had. More tears were falling down my face now, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of closure, of finally hearing the words I had needed to hear 10 years ago. Thank you for saying that, I said. Does not change anything, but thank you. I know, Richard said. I am not trying to change anything. I am just trying to die with a clear conscience. You are not dying, Marcus said forcefully. Stop talking like that. We are all dying, son, Richard said. Some of us just faster than others. He turned back to me. Linda, I need to ask you something. What is it? I said. The kids, Richard said. When I am gone, will you make sure they are okay? Will you keep being the parent I never was? They are adults, I reminded him. They do not need a parent to take care of them anymore. But yes, I will always be there for them. That is what good parents do. Thank you, Richard said. And Linda, one more thing. Anything, I said. Live a long, happy life. Fall in love again if you want. Travel everywhere. Do everything. Build an empire. Be extraordinary. And do not spend one single second feeling guilty about what happened to me. I made my choices. I lived my consequences. Your only job now is to be happy. I will try, I said. Good, Richard whispered. His eyes were closing now, his breathing getting slower. That is all I ever wanted for you. To be happy. I stood there watching him fall asleep. This man who had been my whole world for so long and was now just a memory of a life I had left behind. My children gathered around me and we stood together in silence, saying goodbye to the man Richard had been and mourning the father he never quite managed to be. Richard did not die that day. He recovered from his heart attack and went home a week later with strict instructions to change his lifestyle. He lived for 5 more years, quiet and alone in his small apartment, working his simple job, living his simple life. He never remarried, never dated, never tried to rebuild what he had destroyed. He just existed, counting down the days until his body finally gave out. When he did die, it was peaceful. In his sleep, in his own bed, with no drama or pain. Just a quiet ending to a loud life. We had a small funeral. Just the kids and me and a few people from work who barely knew him. There were no grand speeches. No tearful eulogies. Just simple words about a complicated man who taught us all important lessons about what not to do. After the funeral, Tyler hugged me tight. Thank you, Mom, he said. For everything. For teaching us. For not giving up on us even when we did not deserve you. For showing us what real strength looks like. You are welcome, I said. And thank you for learning. For growing. For becoming the man I always knew you could be. Jessica hugged me next. I'm going to write about this someday, she said. About everything that happened. About what you did and why you did it and what we all learned. I think other people need to hear this story. If it helps someone, I said, then you should write it. Just make sure you tell the truth. The whole truth. Not some sugar-coated version that makes everyone look good. The truth is messy and complicated, and that is okay. I will, Jessica promised. Marcus was last. He hugged me awkwardly because he still was not great with emotions. I should have stood up for you, he said. Back when everything happened. I should have defended you instead of defending him. You were young, I said. You did not understand. But you understand now, and that is what matters. Do you forgive me? Marcus asked. I forgave you a long time ago, I said. The question is whether you have forgiven yourself. I am working on it, Marcus said. Good, I said. Keep working. That night, sitting alone in my condo, I thought about everything that had happened over the past 15 years. The betrayal, the revenge, the anger, pain, the slow rebuilding of relationships, the even slower process of healing. I thought about Richard and the wasted years of our marriage. I thought about my children and how they had grown from spoiled brats into decent adults. I thought about myself and how I had transformed from a doormat into someone who knew her worth. And I realized something important. The revenge had not been about destroying Richard. It had been about saving myself. About refusing to accept being treated as worthless. About standing up and saying, no, I deserve better than this. The demolished house, the frozen accounts, the revelations about money and ownership, those were not acts of cruelty. They were acts of self-preservation. I had not destroyed Richard's life. I had stopped him from destroying mine any further. And that made all the difference. 20 years after the divorce, I am 72 years old and still going strong. My business is now run by a team of excellent people who share my values. I am semi-retired, working when I want to and traveling when I do not. I never remarried. Never wanted to. I dated a few times but realized I was happier alone than I had ever been in a relationship. Some people need partnership to feel complete. I needed independence. Tyler has 3 kids now and they call me grandma and think I am the coolest person alive because I let them eat dessert first and I tell them stories about standing up for yourself. Jessica wrote a book about our family drama and it became a bestseller. She sends me royalty checks that I donate to charities supporting women leaving bad marriages. Marcus finally married Emma and they are happy in a quiet, simple way that suits them both. My life is full and rich and exactly what I want it to be. I have no regrets about what I did 15 years ago. No guilt about the revenge I took. No second thoughts about burning everything down to build something better. 'Cause here is what I learned through all of this. Sometimes love is not enough. Sometimes loyalty is not enough. Sometimes trying your best is not enough. Sometimes you have to stop trying to fix things that are broken beyond repair and just walk away. And sometimes walking away means burning bridges so you cannot go back. That is okay. Not all bridges are worth keeping. Not all relationships are worth saving. Not all people deserve second chances. Richard did not deserve a second chance after 32 years of first chances. My children barely deserved the opportunity to rebuild our relationship. But I gave it to them anyway because they were willing to do the work. They were willing to change. They were willing to admit they were wrong and make it right. That made all the difference. So here I am at 72, sitting on my balcony, watching the sun set over the city, drinking expensive wine and eating fancy cheese and living my best life. I worked hard for this peace. I fought for this happiness. I earned every single moment of joy I experience now. And if I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a thing. Well, maybe one thing. I would have left Richard sooner. I would have recognized my worth earlier. I would have stopped accepting less than I deserved before 32 years had passed. But that is hindsight. In the moment, I did the best I could with the information I had. And when I finally had enough information to understand what was happening, I acted decisively and completely. I burned down my old life and built a new one from the ashes. I took everything that was mine and left Richard with exactly what he had earned. Nothing. And now, 20 years later, I can look back on that moment when I sat in my truck watching my family discover an empty lot where our house used to be, and I can smile. Not because I enjoy their pain, but because that moment represented the exact second when I took my power back. When I stopped being a victim and became a victor. When I stopped letting other people define my worth and started defining it myself. That empty lot was not just the absence of a house. It was the presence of possibility. It was the foundation for everything that came after. It was the beginning of my real life, the one I built on my own terms, the one I controlled completely. So if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, being taken for granted by people who should love you, being treated like you do not matter by people who could not survive without you, being told you are too old or too boring or too worthless to deserve respect, remember this. You are not too old. You are not too boring. You are not too worthless. You are a person with value and dignity and the absolute right to demand better treatment. And if people will not give you that treatment, you have every right to walk away, to take what is yours, to burn bridges, to start over, to build a life that honors who you are instead of who others want you to be. It will be hard, will be scary. People will judge you. They will call you cruel or vindictive or crazy. Let them talk. Their opinions do not pay your bills or fill your heart or make your life worth living. Only you can do that. So do it. Take your power back. Demand your worth. Build your empire. Live your best life. And if anyone tries to stop you, well, you know what to do. Sometimes the best revenge is not just living well. Sometimes the best revenge is living so incredibly well that everyone who doubted you has to watch you shine while they sit in the dark they created for themselves. That is what I did. And 20 years later, I am still shining. Brighter than ever. And I am never going to stop.